So most of you are aware that in April 2010, the Center of Excellence for Clean Energy was awarded a $5 billion Department of Energy grant. This is going to culminate July 31st, 2013. And it has been an amazing ride. So I just want to say the people that have made this work are here. These are the leaders of leaders. It has been my absolute pleasure to work with all of them and their organizations. So in 2009, the Northwest Energy Efficiency Task Force, Cal Shirley, Puget Sound Energy, and BP called me and said, who are your counterparts in other states? So Jim Crabb, you have to listen to this. So I said, I have no counterparts in the other states because those other states, which Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana, don't have centers of excellence. So he said, well, could you work outside of the state? And I said, with money, I could, but I'm not funded to work outside of Washington State. So he said, well, let's go find some money. So we did. It was about the same time that the stimulus came along. So we went to the Department of Energy and were awarded an amazing grant. And these people, distinguished panel, wow. Okay, most of them, their senior leadership served on that Northwest Energy Efficiency Task Force. So they are the boots on the ground of making this. What we did was come up with various committees, many task forces, and they made it work. They have been a joy to work with. And what they have done is pull in another $7 million in match. So what that meant was we have had a $12 million grant. So these are the people that made it happen, and we have the facilitator extraordinaire, Diane Quincy, to whip this distinguished panel in place, and as only she can do. And you're going to hear some amazing stories of how we made this project work. Any of you that worked on this project in the audience, raise your hand, because there are many. Okay, Jamie Krause, project manager, Alan Hardcastle, Avista is back here, Allison Pugh, Edmonds. It's been an amazing ride. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane.
This is a fabulous group of gentlemen, and I'm going to introduce them in a minute, but I want to introduce you to an overview of what is the Smart Grid Grant, and just kind of give you a few flashcards to set the context. And then really what we want to accomplish is to help you understand a little bit about the impact of this grant, what you can all expect to be able to tap into for workforce development in the future, and then really what we learned from coming together in this way. We talked a lot all morning and yesterday about the power of partnerships. And so we've had our ups and downs. We've learned a lot about how to work together, and we want to pass on some of that to you. So I'm excited to be able to moderate this panel. So the first thing I've been asked to do is explain what is Smart Grid, and I'm going to attempt to do that in about a minute because we talk a lot about that, and someone in our prep said we should have a slide on what is Smart Grid. So Avista Utilities, where I work, we actually participated in 2 other Department of Energy grants doing a demonstration project and an investment project that were rather large. And so I'm just going to quote from a couple things our Director of Engineering gave me, and you'll be hearing from her on the next panel. But we really did this to provide greater reliability to our customers, shorten outages, and give customers the opportunity to monitor and make decisions and control how they used our energy. We also wanted to look, as part of the demonstration project across the region, at how can we react to sudden changes in power supply and demand. With a lot more wind and variable energy coming onto the system, we wanted to do some experiments about how to accommodate wind and solar. We also, in Spokane, we upgraded a lot of our major feeder systems, and that was all about reducing energy losses, which creates more efficient use of energy, improving reliability, having better automated outage management, and also just exploring how we could accommodate future technologies on the grid. So those were a few things that Smart Grid is, but I think boiled down, it's really using technology to save energy, reduce cost, and increase reliability. So any engineers in the room, you feel free to ask them more about what it is. So just a quick run through of the grant. It was a DOE grant, and Barbara already mentioned the dollar amounts. And this was a 3+ year endeavor. It started with the grant submission in 2009. So we've been at this journey for quite a while. And in terms of we had a widespread of industry partners across our regions. This is a 5-state grant. So Barbara teed that up of how do you kind of start in Washington, but build this web and net of interconnected people that all have a part to play. So there's a number of different utilities. And of course, always we want to have our labor partners. We're very actively involved in this, from getting the support to get the grant in the first place, and then all throughout into the implementation, because we really need to make sure that what we're producing is a fit for our workforce. And then we had education partners. So a number of different community colleges, you can see some of them listed, and there are actually 15 sub-recipients. So Centralia College was the principal grant investigator. That's a sentence I had never heard of before this, but they, including Jamie Krause as the project manager, were in charge of herding through all these multiple subcontractors. And then we had anchoring university partnerships. So after we got going on the grant, we secured, you can see all the different universities that were involved across the region, all playing a different part, all adding their little spice into the project to make this a success. So the goals overall, 3 things, and these sound simple at a high level, but really complicated to execute on, is design and deliver smart grid training. And that included all kinds of different virtual training, instructor-led training, and actually creating some regional physical training assets that people can use for hands-on training. And then create a web-based portal to really disseminate all of this stuff, and then to share it as widely as we can. So those were the 3 goals. And I'm getting to the Fab 5 now, so heads up, I'm going to be introducing you, and then you'll be talking soon. So let me just back up for a minute. So I just wanted to read, it's in your program, but this is, we heard from Dr. Walton, our introduction this morning, but in the letter he wrote for the program, he said, the U.S. Department of Energy considers this collaboration one of the most successful projects in this funding round of $100 million. One of the 3 largest awardees. I am pleased that collectively we have produced more than $7 million in match, developed more than 50 new classes, shared in open source, trained a bunch of people, which I'll explain in a minute. And then he says, this has been one of the largest grant-funded projects in terms of dollars and regional outreach in the history of Centralia College. Special recognition goes to those who served on boards and committees, and that's where these guys come in, including committee chairs. Troy Nutter was the chair of the governance committee. Troy's not able to be here today. He's having the fun of going through a NERC audit, so if you know anything about that, he for sure would rather be here. So we have Dr. Kevin Schneider taking his place, and I'll say a little bit more about our panel. Ryan Feedy from BPA, who chaired our education task force. And then we had, trying to do technology here, a great pair, Dr. Bob Topping and Jay Pickett, who were chairs of our curriculum committee, and David Sorensen, who chaired our manufacturing task force. So I just want to talk a little bit about this diagram up here. This was affectionately called the cloud diagram, and what it means is that I'm an organization development person, and we all know about forming, storming, norming, and performing. And when you form, the first question is, who the heck are all these people? And then the second question is, what are we supposed to be doing? And so we spent some time trying to get organized around that. And then the storming is, we all have different ideas about how we should go about it. And we have to build trust with each other, and I think that's one hallmark of this grant. So what we did is we decided to have a governance committee, and their role was to really manage the grant. And so representing the governance committee today, we have Dr. Kevin Schneider, and he's the senior research engineer and energy environment in the Energy Environment Directorate at Pacific Northwest Natural Labs. So that Kevin is here for the governance committee. Then we said we really need an education task force, and you could think of this as a clearinghouse for vetting ideas, for connecting resources, and really making sure that all the development of this curriculum and these best practices would meet industry needs, would work in education, and that we were sharing ideas and thoughts effectively. So we have Ryan Feedy, and he's from Bonneville Power Administration, and he's the Engineering Service Manager for Energy Efficiency, and he was the chair of the Education Task Force. And then we said, well, that's great, we have a clearinghouse to kind of share all these ideas, vet them, et cetera, but we really need some working groups. Because that's not very efficient to have 20 or 30 people as a clearinghouse. So we created a curriculum development committee, and we have Dr. Bob Topping here as one of the co-chairs, and Bob is the Director of Strategic Partnerships for RETEC, which is where we're enjoying our day today, and then Jay Pickett, and Jay is the co-chair of the curriculum committee, and Jay's the Senior Power Plant Operator for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And finally, this grant had a manufacturing piece to it because there's a lot of connection points between our industry and what manufacturing is doing. So Dave Sorensen was drafted to lead the manufacturing task force, and he's the executive director of West Camp and the director of the Utah Manufacturing Extension Program. And he was also instrumental in bringing that fifth state, Utah, into the fold. So that's our panel, but it's also the way that we organized this grant. So just quickly, I'm going to run through some of the accomplishments kind of as a flashcard, and then you'll hear from our panel members about more about those things. So we did develop 2 physical training centers. We developed a smart grid substation and distribution field training location in Spokane, Washington at Avista's Jack Stewart Training Center. We also worked with Seattle City Light and developed an advanced meter lab at their facility in Seattle. And those can be regional training centers for a lot of the smart grid training. There was a number of different curriculum modules developed, and those will be available through a Department of Energy website called Enter. So I think over 50 kind of courses, and I heard yesterday almost 300 modules will be loaded into that, and they're available for utilities, for educators, for high schools, et cetera, to use for curriculum around new emerging technology we affectionately call smart grid. You've heard this morning already about, we looked at customer service as a job that was starting to grow in the need for new competencies. So part of this grant, we developed some customer service skill standards. And then there was the job of disseminating all of this information. And these are just some of the places and ways that many of us went to try and disseminate these best practices. And then another part of the grant was to develop a web portal. And so the Pacific Northwest Center of Excellence for Clean Energy has a wonderful website now with all kinds of resources for you around careers, around jobs, around curriculum, around best practices. Another thing was leveraging other grants. So we were able to work with NSF at Edmonds and other colleges to get connected into the Energy Education Association, which met yesterday. They collected an inventory of all the energy-related education in 5 states, and we were able to package that and put it on the website. And also, we have skill profiles for a lot of the jobs on the website. And then you heard Carrie Pierce talk about the K through 12 outreach. that was connected to this grant, and we've done a lot of events, especially for Careers in Energy Week, which is coming up this October, and we'd all urge you all to do something around careers in energy. October 14th to the 20th, 2013, we had the best state performance in the nation. In 2012, we want to be even better. We want to be the #1 Washington, Oregon, Idaho, et cetera, rather than the East Coast. Sorry for those of you who are from the East Coast, but we want to outdo you again this year. And then the Light Stick project, which you heard more about at lunch, which was incredible, inspiring for that long-term pipeline. And then, of course, the DoE wants results. And so this was as of March, so we're still working on this, but over 5,000 people trained, incumbents and apprentices trained, and our target was 1215, so we far exceeded our goal. And the new hire target, 234, and we've exceeded that. And so anecdotally, we've heard from our DOE grant person that this is one of the best projects that they've seen in the country. So I'm excited to open this up next to our panel to hear about how we did it. I think I'm going to skip over this because Alan's going to talk about that in the next panel. So just the final slide is a reminder, why do we do all this stuff? So that we can get people to work in exciting careers in energy. So with that, I'd like to open it up to our panel, and I've asked each one of them to respond to this question. This first question is, all right guys, Fab 5, what are you most proud of? Given all of that's gone on in the last 4 years, from your perch or your perspective on this grant process. So we'll start with Kevin and we'll go down the row on this first question. But I may mix it up later, so you got to keep on your toes.
I think probably one of the most impressive things with this project as a whole is when you look at the number of people involved. Not only did we take a lot of people from a large geographic area, but also from a large segment of industry, academia, and government. So it was really a broad range of people from different backgrounds and different areas, and they were all able to work together very successfully. Anyone who's worked on a large project before has probably run into this situation where it doesn't always run smoothly. And the fortunate thing with this project was that that was not the case. Everyone worked together very well and were able to move forward towards the end goals.
Great. So Ryan, from your Education Task Force Chair perch, what do you think? What were you most proud of?
For me, from the Education Task Force point of view, I think what was most exciting for me was seeing all the work done around the curriculum and the foundation it lays for future students to be able to go and learn about smart grid, learn about the energy industry. There's just vast information that's now available that we didn't have before, which was products really driven by the curriculum committee here, and just the infrastructure put in place for the network of people working on this grant. I mean, it just was really amazing, all the different entities on both sides of the table that we got together and the foundation that's in place now to keep that network together going forward.
All right, Bob, what do you think?
Well,
what were you most proud of?
I think that the theme that I'm most proud of is leadership, and there's 3 people that displayed leadership to me in a way that I've never seen before that I enjoyed very much. But first of all was Jay, who was the chair of the curriculum committee, and what he did is he peeled back the onion. As we brought all this hyperbole to him, he peeled it back and he says, this is what's of value to industry. So he really taught me how to chunk curriculum and turn it into modules that make value and turn the language into one that can be universally communicated not only through industry but through education. Another person was Jeff Hammerlin, and when his efforts to put together the Train the Trainer program, he's a professor at Portland State, his vision of what that Train the Trainer program was going to look like and how it was going to be conveyed throughout the region, and his passion about making sure that it makes connection to a lot of audience that hadn't been a part of that. And last but not least, and the most profound person that had leadership was Lauren Huckabee from Avista. Her ability to turn this hyperbole peeled back by Jay into something of value to a generation that's going to replace the industry was truly remarkable. And I really thank you, Lauren. I have a doctorate in instructional design, and you've taught me more than I ever learned in my dissertation. So you did an amazing job. Thank you.
Great. Jay, how about you? What are you most proud of along this journey?
Working with this group, I think back, and I guess the best way to say it is, there was a point when Lewis looked at Clark and said, "What do you think about going west? You might learn something." And it's like that every time I work with these guys and gals. And the thing I'm most proud of, at the end, I got to see a train-the-trainer effort that was put on by Kevin Schneider, Bob Topping, Jeff Hammerlin. And at the end, I thought, well, if you would have done this 3 years ago, you would have saved us a lot of work. And so I know we got somewhere, but then I realized I'm sitting in with in a bunch of trainers, being educated with people that sounded like they were working in the industry, and right then I realized that it was a huge accomplishment. And then I always think about all the curriculum, and Vista brought a lot of this modular concept so we can stack different parts of the program, take what people need, and then offer it on Enter to everybody. This is out there for everybody to use. And I think right there I can say this group and this whole group has made a change in the industry, and it's a good change.
Great.
Thank you. And it's good to see all you guys.
Yeah. From a manufacturing perspective and being part of this whole
Well,
merry band, what do you think, Dave?
Let me say, I spent most of my career actually in energy. I was with GE in the utility industry, patents in the field, and I was 10 years director of engineering at the Department of Energy lab in Idaho. So I spent a lot of my career there. And with that background, I have to tell you, I'm very astonished about the success for creating training and so forth, mostly for the future. I don't think, it's one thing to go out in industry and to see the need for a job and how that should be done right there, and you figure out how to do that. But, smart grid is just now beginning to be implemented. And I don't think most people appreciate how dramatic a change this is. Forgive me, I know Avista's great and out in front, but frankly, the utility industry hasn't changed much in the last 100 years. You think about it, you all remember when we used to have meter readers come right around to your house, right? When was the last time you had a meter reader for your phone? We're making a change here that is an accumulative change over decades and decades that will include, as Diane pointed out, these new aspects of what smart grid is all about. It will make us more deliverable. It will make it more secure, more effective, and it will transform to the user decisions about how we use electricity, because we're likely going to have rate structures to deal with. Which means if every user can decide things, then every user is going to be inquiring of their utility how to do things. That means you've got 300 million users who are now inquiring of the utility who haven't had much interface before. I mean, there's very, very challenging issues. And the training that we're looking at are to fill those positions that are anticipated to be coming. So I think this has been a very visionary group to be able to see where things are at today and what the current needs are and how this thing is maturing, because this isn't a 1 or 2 year deal. This is a 10, 20, maybe even 30-year project that we will continue, because as it gets implemented, we'll find new enhancements to the system. So for me, it's an overwhelming challenge, and to see how the group has worked together to sift through that and define reasonable outcomes that need to be available, I think that's a great opportunity. I will say one other thing, and it's a little more in my spectrum in manufacturing. I know that in a number of the other regions, there have been an initiative by education, the colleges, universities, and the utilities in this particular arena. And I think they overlooked the fact that neither the colleges or the universities manufacture products, and most of these changes are going to occur because we're going to use new kinds of monitoring devices and new information systems and so forth, and that means new kinds of goods. So I think in this group, we have linked to industry more, and I think that broadens the capability and the vision that we've had.
Great. So that's kind of at a high level what some of you are most proud of. So now I'd like to bring it down to one specific thing, one product, and you could say training, but one part of the training or one part of this project that you're excited about disseminating to all the people in the room and really all the people across the country. So what's one thing you think is pretty cool that all of you can expect to hit the streets sometime this summer to a neighborhood near you? So Kevin, what's one thing you're excited about?
Was something else you want to say? Go ahead. Okay. So once again, representing the governance committee, they didn't really have a final product. And so I'd say the thing that was most interesting and the most exciting was how they operated. So when you talk about the size of this grant, $5 million with $7 million of in-kind contribution, that's $12 million. That clearly requires some level of organization at a very high level. And that's what the governance board really did. They put that all together. I think the interesting thing about this, though, was that they did not micromanage it. You have all these folks to the left here who did the actual work. And so what the governance board did was put together a structure that put in place these task force and subcommittees and gave them the resources to do their job and then got out of the way. And I think just using that as a template for future projects is probably one of the most exciting things I saw come out of this from the governance board level.
So that's a best practice that we can use again that Kevin's excited about. So what's one cool thing that you see as an output, Brian, of this?
Before I dive in, I just wanted to relay one last thought on the previous question to kind of tie it up, because as I was hearing everyone, something that came to mind was relevance. And I think that's what really made this work connection with industry and education, and what made it so successful is that all the work products we're putting out were really relevant to industry today, not just training folks in the future. And because of that, I think one of my favorite things and products we created was the website itself. To have all that information out there and available, it's relevant today, let's get it out there to folks so they can go and find it and use it. And in particular, the videos we put together were extremely cool. So working with Barbara and the team on throwing videos together, I mean, they made Smart Grid look sexy, which could be hard to do, and make the utility industry look sexy, but it's really exciting watching those videos, and I think it will really get others excited about what's coming down the pike.
They should be on Netflix, right? Okay. So Bob, what's one specific thing you think is really cool as an actual tangible product out of this grant that you can all expect to have access to?
I think if you were here yesterday, I call it the Smart Grid Sandbox, but it's the Smart Grid toolkit that's available. It's in a box, and it has a lot of information that you can use and utilize it in your developing curriculum, and that brings a product that comes out from the curriculum subcommittee is a how-to guide to shift outcomes-based curriculum to competency-based curriculum. And that guide will be available on Enter along with a module that tells you how to do it. I'm very proud of that.
Great. Jay, how about you? One cool product that you're excited to launch out of this grant?
It comes pretty quick to mind. It's very humbling to work with the people that I worked with on this, and I would say it's actually pretty comforting because Smart Grid takes smart people, and I've gotten the opportunity to meet some of the smartest people I've ever seen, even smarter than I can imagine, and I'm happy to say that this group got put together as a brain trust that's going to continue on this effort, and it's going to continue to keep this effort strong, and I think that's really the most valuable thing in my mind. And I thank everybody for the opportunity to work with these people.
I think one of the things that, for me, was very significant is the concept of the modules such that you aren't required to go through a full lattice of activity, but you can select those modules where you have voids. And so this can both accelerate the training for individuals where they are trained only in those areas where they need the added capability or skills. To me, that's a great concept. Bob's done a lot of work on this, And I think I see this more in this activity than I've seen before, and I think it's a big step forward.
Anybody else have any other cool things they want to talk about as far as the output of the grant?
Well, I can't say enough about, again, is the courage that Barbara had to allow us to go ahead and do things that I know kept her up at night and worried about what is going to be the ramification, because really strategic leadership is about results and impact, and I think the impact is pretty amazing. And I think what it's opened up to me is a lot of relationships. So one of the big takeaways that I have is a whole new network of relationships that I didn't have before for new information, new ideas, and just being able a chance to share that in forums like this.
Great. So I'll just echo something, and then I'm going to ask a few more questions of our panel and then see if you have questions. So I put back up the website here, and to echo that is a huge resource. And so I would encourage you to root around in there. There's amazing things that you can find about videos on careers. You can find out where all the training is occurring in these 5 states. You can find links to curriculum. You can find links to people. So this is what we hope will be a hub for all the people in the room and all the people that you know that aren't in the room. So if you're questioning how to access some of this stuff that's an output, start here. So I just wanted to echo that. So my next question is, what shifts in thinking did you have to do personally throughout this last 3.5 years, given this grant process? So what had to change about your approach or your thinking? And I'm going to open this up to anybody who feels like this would be a question they want to take on.
Start. So we talk about changing our mind as a 180-degree shift. We're in a meeting, we talk something 360 degrees. I think I've changed like 900 degrees on this deal. So we started looking at, and a lot of people at the table were involved with customer service reps, and we started looking into that, and that was like a mind-blowing experience for me to realize what we were expecting from these people, and we went on with skill standards, and it really kind of set the tone for me. I just think that it opened up my mind. It got me to quit trying to put my arms around the cloud and just accept it and start to understand it. I think it's okay to not completely understand it, but I don't think you really can. It just depends on what you want to do with it. The cloud is not really technical in my mind anymore. It's not really political in my mind anymore, but it's a little bit of everything. Anyway, thank you.
So anybody else, any shifts in thinking that you had to do as part of this project?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts I had to kind of go through is one that I alluded to in an earlier comment where I said this project spanned not just a large geographic area, but also a lot of depth of the industry. So it wasn't just the engineering level, it included trades and everyone in there. And coming from a national laboratory where we kind of think we know how power systems work, it's pretty clear we focus on the engineering side of things. And there's very few people that have a lot of experience with the trades and what that means. And so a lot of the folks I've worked with, they kind of ask me, why are you involved with this one? It doesn't seem to be engineering related. And I explained to them, but this is the foundation that everything else is built on. And where I'm going with this is because of the storms in the Northeast that have been occurring over the past couple of years, Department of Energy has a really large focus on this concept of distribution and power system resiliency. And so a lot of the folks I work with start coming up with algorithms for this and that, and it's really complicated. And because of this project, I kind of explained to them, those are part of it, but tie it back to the people that are on the ground. What does this mean for the trades? It doesn't matter how good your algorithm is, if the lines are all on the ground and you don't have linemen or line folks who are trained. And so thinking of it holistically within the utility environment. And that was one that I thought was really eye-opening and probably one of the greatest values of this project to me.
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest shifts is just recognizing how big a change the energy industry is going through, as has been referenced already, and just the different paradigms we have to be thinking about, the different parts of the organization, from my perspective as utility, that we have to start to bring together and start talking together that typically don't. We're really, really good about sitting in our cylinders of excellence and understanding our world and what we do. But as you look at smart grid, it's really tying together all these facets of the power industry that haven't either traditionally worked together or understood each other's worlds before. And it just really changes the whole box you even start to work in. And it's just amazing, not just for the education that we need for new folks coming into the industry, but to re-educate the folks that are already in the industry. So that was really eye-opening to me and a paradigm shift about what do we have to do to our existing workforce to get them ready for the smart grid that's coming down the pipeline here.
Cool. Bob?
One of the greatest things or shifts that I learned is how progressive and strategic the IBEW Local 77 is in order to look at succession planning and developing talent. Their voice at the table was tremendous, and it offered a lot of opportunities to see things that we hadn't seen before. So I really think the IBEW Local 77's participation was just stellar.
Anything else that surprised you about this? It's kind of one of those things where you sign on this grant thing and it gets going, and it's like Alice in Wonderland's wild ride. You really don't know if you're going to see a white rabbit or the Queen of Hearts or whatever. So what else, anything else that surprised you about this process, Dave?
I've served on a lot of committees, including National IEEE and others, and routinely on those committees you go and you represent a certain position and you're there to defend your position. And that has not been the case here. I think I was very taken by the fact that everybody sees the vision. They are looking for how their activity contributes or adds to the vision, and how they can help others contribute to the project. A totally different environment that I'm normally used to out there.
And off of that, I would say how much I was able to learn from this experience because of that environment that we were all operating in. I just was really thankful for how much I got out of the little bit I put into it.
So we started into this and wanted to touch on what were some of the key factors for success. Not so much about this project, but any rules of thumb that we could offer, because all of you are involved in collaborative effort in some shape or form. So what are some ingredients that really worked about, what you're hearing that we could try to all replicate either in projects within our own organization, or especially when we have projects that are cross-organizational between a lot of the entities that we talked about this morning. So secrets to success. Can you put your finger on any rules of thumb that you would recommend on the next project you work on, or a project that someone else might be working on?
Go ahead. Well, I think the first thing is to get the right talent to be able to carry out the functions. And I think our project manager, Jamie Krause, was the right talent for this job to go forward. She was behind the scenes, but we had quick delivery of information. We were able to get reports back and to coordinate events. And I think the other side is version control and having the right version. And so having a communications person like Monica make sure that we have the current information and we're looking at the right stuff and being able to make decisions on current information. So I think hiring the right talent to be able to implement some of the deliverables or some of the objectives of the grant was one of the key things that made this work.
Well, and I think, the other thing that got most people going early in the morning were the 6 o'clock emails that Barbara sent out.
Yeah, those are useful.
What wasn't too much of an impact for us in Utah because it's 7 o'clock there, as I mentioned yesterday, but...
So 6 a.m. emails from your principal grant investigator are important. Ryan, did you have something else?
Well, I'd also say that we had a group that really wanted to cooperate, which is extremely important, but it was also a coordinated effort, which I think was key to making this grant work. So just a tremendous job by the staff working on the grant, and also a big round of applause to everyone who was there at the very beginning. I came in a few months later, but at the beginning, I think everyone took the time to sit down and try to understand and have a clear vision for where this grant was going to end up and the structure that was needed to execute the grant. So I think instead of just running right out of the blocks, everyone got a clear view of what lane they're headed down. And that's what's really impressed me is the cloud that was up there was that infrastructure really helped the execution of the grant, separating out the governance structure and having a separate governance committee and then all the subcommittees that were created. And then I always remembered at the top of every meeting agenda was the mission and vision right up top. It was a reminder every time we got together of where we're going to end up. I think that really helped us make sure we could meet the finish line at the end.
I'd like to add to that in that at the beginning it did seem a little bit slow because all that structure was being put into place, and it really paid dividends in the long run of taking a little bit of time up front to figure out what structure with subcommittees, task force, what makes the most sense to get to where we're going. That was time I think that was really well spent, and it's probably a good model for other folks.
And go ahead and then.
Just to add one thing real quickly, it was very successful. I also want to point out that there were very different interests at the table. This was not a stacked deck by any means. We had opposing ideas, and so I'm even listening to these tips for the next time I run into these situations. But it was a very a complex situation that was managed very well, and I appreciate that, and thank you to everybody.
So I'm going to go out of my facilitator mode and add some of my own opinion about that question, since I was part of some of these different gatherings. So one thing I think of that I would say is go slow to go fast. And at first, it is a lot of swirling around and confusion and what are we all doing, and why doesn't somebody just say what we're supposed to do? And, well, I don't agree with, they said what we're supposed to do, and I don't agree with that. I think we should do something different. So that is really that forming and storming. And there were a lot of differences of opinion about how do we go about creating curriculum, how do we endorse it or verify that it's valued and valuable. How much of it can we do? Who's going to do what? All of those things were just kind of churning for a while. And I think the courage to just stick with it, to listen to people, and to really work on, I remember the meeting where this all came together of, okay, here's how we could organize ourselves. But I don't want to portray that out of the box on day one. We had this elegant clear structure. So that is one thing. I think another one for me, back to having the right people involved, is having people who also have a strong network. Because there were so many times where there would be something where we would get stuck, and somebody in the room knew someone who could bring in a resource or get us through that log jam. So I think that's very important. And then another thing that was a tenet of this grant, and I've heard Barbara say this a lot, is really industry-led. And so that IBEW and business involvement. And our very first meeting, or one of the first meetings, we all met up at the Puget Sound Energy Wild Horse Interpretive Center at the wind farm above Vantage. So we met in the middle of the state, and we all came in, and it was a very unusual meeting. There was a big room full of us, and they said, okay, everybody that is a member of industry, we want you to sit on the inside ring of this meeting. And so we're all like, well, we want to sit in the back. We're confused. We don't know why we should be here or what we're doing. We'll just sit in the back. No, we have to sit in the center, and then everybody else sits on the outside. And for this particular meeting, the ground rule was that we were talking as an industry about what we needed, and it was a big listening session by the other stakeholders. And I remember Barbara Hins-Turner bringing a roll of duct tape, and she said, this is going to be really hard for me because, not to react and ask questions and add my viewpoints, but this symbolically is a symbol that this is about getting that front-end input. And so when I look back on that, I think that was not only a symbolic but an instrumental way to start out on the right foot. And then there was a lot of time afterward for networking. We had lunch, and then the room was just abuzz with questions and interactions, and we're doing this, we're doing that. A lot of connections from even colleges who didn't know one another were working on the same thing, and businesses and education and labor. And so So that to me is one tip just from a process standpoint about how you can get these things going. Where do we go from here? This was a great adventure and it's about to be over. So how do we keep some of these things rolling and expanding? So any thoughts on that from anyone?
I think one of the characteristics about this particular program for me is, I've seen a lot of programs like this where the award comes out, the objective was to train 1,200 people. 1,200 people are trained, and yeah, we did it, and that's the end of it. But if you look at the result of what comes from this program, it's far beyond that. What is it, 300 modules? If you go to the website, the accumulation of related data and information that's available there, this is a long-lasting, this is far more valuable than the individuals that we simply train. This is a long-lasting resource that has now matured as a result of the program.
How do we keep this going? Where do we go from here?
Well, as I think we've kind of all alluded to, just the network we've built, and I think for me, an appreciation of all the other players that are working in this space will be lasting. It's broken down a lot of traditional barriers that I think have been out there in the region and in industry, with getting folks together at the table that usually don't get together or come from very different perspectives. And I think all that energy over the last 3 years through the grant of breaking that down and establishing the network and the relationships that we have will keep this going on into the future. I think there's just so much energy in sort of getting past inertia and getting past first base that once you start rounding past that, it just starts going downhill, and I think that's kind of at the point we're at right now. If we think about it, the smart grid demo that is being done through the region here, led by BPA and Pacific Northwest National Labs, from the industry side, Vista and a number of utilities, it's the largest smart grid demo in the U.S. that went through ARA funding at $190 million. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of really the kind of work that's going to need to be done in the utility industry to actually implement smart grid. So I think, as Dave mentioned, this is going to need to continue for the next decade plus.
So I think just a couple more comments about this. I think another key for success is having a big involvement from our veterans community, and I have learned a lot more through this grant about the resources, the challenges, and ways that our businesses can connect more with this huge talent pool in the military. And so that, I think, was one factor for success. And then really spending time with individuals, because for me, in workforce development and organization development, I've had so many ancillary connections and benefits. Jamie Krause, who was our project manager, has a huge workforce development background, so she was able to help our company connect more into the resources in the state, and I wasn't expecting that walking into the door of this grant, but our company just got great benefits, and part of it is a natural curiosity about, Jamie, what do you do, and here's what we're working on, and then she would say, well, I know someone, or I know how to do that, and those kind of conversations were replicated over and over again, not just from our perspective at my company, but I'm sure we could hear stories from, there's probably at least 100 people that have been involved in a core way in this grant. They could all tell stories of that multiplier effect from being involved. So just one last chance for you to say, tell any story or anything else you want to say about what was most personally rewarding for you if you haven't. I always say, don't ever leave with that thought of, I wish I would have said X. So what is it that you really want to say in closing here?
I'd just like to thank you all for allowing me to participate in this and be a part of it. I've learned so much, and at this point in my career, having the opportunity to see the Lauren Huckabees of the world and these young people of the world that are going to take over the workforce, and just see what a gift they are and have a chance to be able to give to those folks and show them pathways to an amazing industry. The thing that drives me about the utility industry, it's an industry of opportunity, and that is amazing. And the shift that's going to occur, we're going to see a whole new audience in the industry. They look different, they speak differently, and they're going to do things differently. And they're going to make decisions differently than we've ever seen before. And to be a part of that, I just really thank you for that opportunity to be a part of that.
So anybody else, last words that I wish I would have said before we close out here?
I think my last words would be a challenge. I see a lot of problems internationally. Who knows, maybe we go to different countries. I see a lot of discussion. People in the room, Dr. Robin Podmore, met people that are interested in taking it into other countries, and who knows where everybody ends up. So hopefully we even expand. Other countries have these same problems, if not worse.
Anybody else?
And I'll just echo again how rewarding this experience was for me. I learned a lot personally from everyone involved and feel just thankful to be a part of it. I know going to all-day meetings isn't usually something I usually get excited about, but this was one I did. I definitely look forward to coming to this meeting every time we got together.
Okay, so before I open it up for questions, I just also want to thank, one of you mentioned the whole idea of leadership. I think it was Bob. And I think about leadership. First, I'll start with my own company. Mike Hansen is our craft training manager and has been involved in apprenticeships and craft training for a long time. And he was instrumental in helping this grant get off the ground and has really created a training facility that's state-of-the-art in the Spokane region. So I wanted to mention and thank him for his leadership. Jamie Kraus, I have not seen someone who could manage a project of this complexity and this length ever, and do it with such aplomb and such calmness and reasonableness and great negotiating skills while she was herding all of us toward the finish line. And I think our success is due in large part to her, as well as Barbara Hins-Turner as having the vision and the courage, and Dr. Walton for signing us up all for this, and for Barbara and Jamie's staff as well. So I just wanted to close before the questions. I was reading some stuff last week, and I thought this is a perfect way to end this panel. And it's a quote from a guy named Boyd Clark, and it says, "Leadership at its core is an act of faith in others." And I really think that's the success of this, not only this grant, but the faith that we have in the future of our industry, and just trying to equip our future workforce pipeline with the skills that they need to really make, the next century really great for all of us.